Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy podcast, a weekly podcast whose mission is multifaceted. Each week when you tune in, you will find episodes that question best practices, challenge music education dogma, facilitate conversations about touchy topics, demonstrate pedagogies, and conversations where colleagues learn from each other. This is episode 267, The Choir Teacher That Sucks, with Mitch Al-Ubaidi. Young teachers are bailing from the classroom within the first 5 years in an epidemic fashion. Many things contribute to this, but one factor is the expectations that young teachers bring in. Are they always realistic? Are young teachers being fed a fairy tale about what teaching is? Mitch is a young conductor and teacher who believes in his own words that he sucks dog water at teaching. So 2 years into a new career as a music educator, he stepped out of the classroom. He made a post on Facebook recently that got my attention. He graciously agreed to be vulnerable here for me and for you, the Choralosophy audience. In this conversation, Mitch and I discussed the challenges faced by choir directors, music educators in general, particularly the feelings of inadequacy and the struggles with classroom management and student engagement. Then we explore Mitch's personal experiences teaching, his laundry list, so to speak, of all the things that he thought he was really bad at. We discuss the expectations placed on music educators and the importance of structuring effective rehearsals. I gave him my ideas, but I'm sure in the Choralosophy Facebook page, you'll have some ideas to the problems that he presented as well. The discussion, it also delves into communication strategies for giving concise directions and enhancing vocal warmups, ultimately emphasizing the shared struggles of all of us that we have when we're first starting out in this profession. So tune in, have your thinking stimulated and challenged. Maybe you'll agree with some of my suggestions for Mitch. Maybe you'll disagree. And like I said, head over to the Choralosopher's Facebook page where we can discuss those things freely in that private forum. And of course, you can go over to the Substack as well, which is a little bit of an off Facebook place to chat and leave comments and ask questions. Your music program or event deserves a platform that does it all without the extra costs. With Ludus, you get seamless ticketing, built-in marketing, powerful fundraising, and volunteer management, where volunteers can sign up, schedule shifts, and track hours with ease. Need to sell merchandise and concessions in person? Ludus Retail lets you log sales by each group, track inventory, keep everything organized. Hosting music lessons or theater camps? They have a classes feature, which makes registration and student tracking effortless. And it's free for your organization. Thousands of programs already trust Ludus because they help you focus on what matters most, the performance. If you haven't already, I really think it's time for you to ditch the bulky sight reading books, the paper, all of the things that are already in the kids' folders in your classroom because it's not customizable to what they need in the moment. Sight Reading Factory allows this and so much more, including auto-assessment for at-home assignments, no more grading them individually. They can be graded in the moment. So use the Choralosophy checkout code, Choralosophy. When you check out, it'll give you a 10% discount every time you get a membership for yourself and for all of your students, which is really, really important so they can do this at home. I'm not sure how much, if anything, out there has not gone up in price since 2020, but I know one thing that hasn't, and that is the membership to the Patreon and to the Substack to support this show. The people who are signed up over there as paid subscribers, as my thank you to them, they can get things like t-shirts from the Choralosophy.com shop. They can also get access to my Google folder of teaching materials that I've talked about on the show for over the years. And of course, they just want to help make sure that this show can continue. And one of those benefits is a shout out on the show. Shout outs for the Inner Circle and producer tiers over on Patreon. We have Brian Long, Chandler Smith, Venture Studios, David Kowalczyk, Kyle Peterson, Max Jackson, Michael Herron, Rebecca Chalk, and Stephen Kathy Kakachik. Okay. All right, everybody. I am here with Mitch Al-Ubaidi, and we're going to be talking about some strategies in the classroom, but I think the overarching conversation that I'm really interested in having with you, Mitch, is just what it is that makes us feel sometimes like we suck at being choir teachers. I was flagged down by a post that Mitch made recently on a Facebook page where you described yourself as a choir director who sucks at being a choir director. And that my ears perked up and my eyes perked up because, of course, one of the first things that I did on this show 7 years ago was put an episode out called What I Suck At. And it was designed to kind of have the same self-reflection that a lot of what the vibe of your post did, which is to acknowledge that we're not good at everything and we don't necessarily have to be good at everything. But at the same time, I know that there's a lot of choir directors, younger choir directors out there, probably in your age bracket, who are feeling this way. And I just want to process through that. So Mitch, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be speaking with you.
This is going to be fun. So why don't you, actually, if it's okay, let's start by just having you share some biographical information with everybody. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? Give us the elevator pitch for
Yeah,
Mitch. Ooh, that
so
rhyme.
I grew up in a small town called Amro, Wisconsin, a town of about 3,000 people, and I really felt like I was, kind of very much like my own uh, person, my own unique person in a sea of just kind of normalcy. Where I grew up, music was it was popular more like in the band world, but it wasn't popular like more so in like the choral setting. And
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I was always interested in music. I played guitar, I played piano, I sang in choir more so when I got to high school. When I was younger, I was involved in choir but was really more concerned about if my friends were doing choir. But as I got to high school, I was deeply inspired by my choir director when I was in high school. And he just created a really welcoming space and he really inspired me to go for music education, much like other. So I went to school at at University of Wisconsin Oshkosh for music education, and I moved 3 years ago to Madison, capital city, and I was the middle school choir director at Fort Atkinson Middle School for about 2 years. And um, yeah, that's just kind of the basic gist. I've been involved with several professional choirs, New Voices, Northeastern Wisconsin Voices in the Fox Valley area. I sang with the Madison Chamber Choir, and I currently uh, am the community choir director of Rock River Singers, a brand new choir that me and my colleagues, when I was still working in the school district, started
Mm-hmm.
last year. It was our last year was our first year together, and we are in year two, and next week we have our first fall concert of the year.
Well, that's awesome. That's exciting. Now, here's something I wonder if you would think this is a fair framing. You are a young and hungry choral musician, music educator who would put yourself in a category of still trying to figure a lot of stuff out about yourself and about the profession. Is that fair?
Yes, yes. I feel like I've
Yeah.
had a lot of, or I believe to have a lot of gaps in my learning. Because when I entered going to school at University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, it was at a really weird time where we had faculty that were just leaving and they had made a name for themselves at the university, and then we would start with someone new.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't actually start going to University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, like the main campus. I had started at University of Wisconsin Fox Valley when they were still around. So I've had a choir director every single year. I've had a new choir director every single year I've been in college. Even
Oh
when I
wow.
transferred to the main campus, I just constantly felt like I was starting over and like trying to play catch up. I've learned a lot of different perspectives on how to teach and how to direct, but I haven't been able to see that or just kind of see one perspective kind of unfold from the beginning, which I feel like I have a little I have difficult time, trying to conceptualize like what it looks like from day one or what a rehearsal process can look like from day one.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And if your philosophies of education and models for the educators who raise you are constantly changing, then I could imagine it creating like almost like a sense of ADD of where do I look and who, like, what is, yeah, that, I mean, totally makes sense. Is it okay if I just read the post that you posted the other day?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, because for the audience who is not on Facebook, bless them. I'm always jealous of the people who don't have to be on Facebook, but this was a really good post, and you were very blunt, and so I want to make sure the audience has the perspective here. So here's what Mitch said on Facebook: I'm a choir director, and I suck at being one. Like actual dog water, as the kids say. Hopefully that made you chuckle. In all seriousness, I taught middle school choir for a little over 2 years, and I currently direct a non-auditioned adult community choir. I no longer teach, but I want to develop my rehearsal techniques and directing skills. Here are some of the things I need guidance on to be more confident during rehearsal: how to structure a rehearsal with an end goal in mind besides just running through the pieces, how to give short and concise directions, being present to how the singers sound instead of sticking to the music in my head, how to structure effective warm-ups, how to teach vowel shapes, vocal pedagogy, how to diagnose the issue and rehearsal, like intonation, lack of breath support, and then asking for resources and advice. That's of course a pretty comprehensive list, because yes, those are all the things you got to get good at in order to to be good at leading a choir rehearsal for sure. So you're on the right track, because that means you're asking the right questions. Now, would you mind sharing with us, before we go too far into that, sharing with us a little bit of the story of why you're no longer teaching?
That's a really good question. I resigned from teaching in October 2024. And I was just, to put it quite frankly, I was just not happy with what I was doing. And it took a lot of reflecting and a lot of thinking to make that decision to leave education. I think there were a lot of different factors involved. I had a difficult time with the students that I was teaching. Had this picture in my mind when I was like first going into teaching, and excuse me, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school. I felt really discouraged at when students were outwardly disrespectful towards teachers and other adult figures. And to me, I just couldn't figure out why they were were acting the way that they did, that acting they were. And it was
Mm-hmm.
difficult for me to put myself in the shoes of a kid growing up in today's climate, and what that all involves. And I was just very burnt out and tired, and I spent a lot of the time beating myself up, and I just felt like I couldn't work my way through it. Resigned at the beginning of at what would have been my third year overall teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and I had felt that I need to put myself first, and it's not fair for the students that I'm teaching for to have a teacher that is just running on fumes and cannot take care of themselves mentally in that way. So I made a really hard decision to leave pretty early on in the school year. And thinking about it now, I don't think I gave it a good enough, I don't think I gave it a chance for it to really work at it. 'Cause I'm reflecting on all these things. And yeah, I may have like significant gaps in my learning, but that doesn't mean that I can't start doing the work and filling in those gaps.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and I hope you give it another crack sometime, because that's actually one of the reasons I wanted to ask about it. Because I one of the things that I tell um, any student teacher that comes to work with me is I give, and I've done this on the show too, but I outline the framework for the first 5 years of teaching, and not as an exact science, but as a here's how it generally happens for a lot of us that actually make it into the mid into the third decade of teaching, is that your first year you suck at it. But the problem is, there you don't know that you suck at it, because you have nothing to compare it to. And so a lot of times first year teachers come into that honeymoon phase where there's like, hey, I'm getting paid, I've got a choir, I've got a music appreciation class, I'm living the dream, this is what I always wanted. But you're not, your pedagogy's trash, your pacing is trash, the kids are learning very little, classroom management is bad. But it doesn't really dawn on you that those things are bad, because you're still loving the job and all of that. And I tell student teachers that's how it's going to be next year for you, and it's okay that it's that way. Like it's kind of, you're kind of supposed to suck at the things that you've never done before. Like that is kind of normal for any job. And then year 2 and 3-ish for a lot of young teachers are the hardest years. Sometimes that can go year 2, 3, 4, because at that point you sucked in year one, because now you've got some actual perspective to look back on and go, oh my goodness, I am not doing a very good job. And then by about year five, you will have had enough finally. Kids cycle through so that you can start kids afresh a second time or a third time, because that's what it takes actually in teaching, especially in an ensemble music program like a middle school or a high school where we see kids for multiple years, that by approximately year 4 or 5, you start to feel like you are a professional. Like yep, when I see this problem, I've tackled that before. I know how to go back and tackle that. And I can, and then of course you can get into year 10 or 10 and beyond where you start to feel like you've encountered every possible thing that might happen. And then you walk into school with almost no stress because you're like, all right, so what's the world going to throw at me today? Because I've seen it 100 times. But that does take time. But I'm interested in this because the story you're telling is very common. In fact, there was a National Teachers Union study that just came out this last week. I don't know if you saw it, that listed why young teachers are leaving the profession. And the reason you just cited is the number one reason, which is student behaviors and just not knowing how to engage with that, not being able to identify with that. Thoughts about all that, about what I just said?
Yeah, I think what you had described, um, especially on the early stages of a teaching career, is exactly what I is exactly what I felt. I felt like the first year, like I knew I wasn't like good. It's like you don't know what you don't know, so you might as well just try a bunch of
Right.
things. And then year two, it's like, okay, I'm definitely not doing that again. Or I
Yeah.
think I will do this again, maybe just tweak it a little bit differently. And then year three, it's beginning of year three for me was like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that really rings true. It was student behaviors that was ultimately why I left. Kind of as I said earlier, I have trouble putting myself in the shoes of a kid growing up today. Not saying that the behavior is inexcusable, especially like the really extreme behaviors. I yeah, yeah, I agree.
If it makes you feel any better, I had a lot of trouble with that too when I was your age. It was for me, especially with the boys. I was the oldest sister or oldest brother of three younger sisters. And so my younger sisters were teenagers when I started teaching. So, like, they were in high school when I started teaching high school kids. And so connecting and figuring out the high school girls at the beginning was pretty easy for me comparatively. But I could not figure out boys and their hormones and their immaturity, and like, especially the ninth graders. And I honestly did not like teaching them. Looking back on it, I was 100% not the same quality of a teacher for the boys as I was for the girls, because I couldn't put myself in their shoes, even though I was a boy and was in adolescence not too long prior to that. And I still couldn't wrap my mind around why in the heck they're so weird. And honestly, I didn't really ever make real strides on that until I became a dad. When I became a dad, everything changed for me in the classroom. I started to see all of those kids, which sounds dumb because it's like it's an intellectual, like you should already know this, but it's harder to do in practice, which is to see all those kids as somebody else's kid. And then I had the experience at home of all the frustration of being a parent and seeing my own children do the dumbest things as little kids. But then you're like, okay, yeah, that's just how kids are. And you learn to compartmentalize it. But then of course, then there's the strategies to also, which are important, which is classroom management stuff. And are we as the teacher building a structure that allows kids, even though kids are the way they are, to thrive in that structured playpen, so to speak, of the classroom? And that does take time for you to be able to do.
Earlier, I was like, yep, I could totally relate. I had a lot of difficulty teaching male students.
Are you a director new to the profession? Or are you a seasoned director who is in a new place? One of my favorite tips for generating interest in the program and to instill buy in is to plan a trip. There are so many options. You can go to Orlando, you can go to Ireland, or you can perform in a parade or a theme park. You can even take the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York. Wherever you end up, not only will your current crew look forward to the trip, but younger students will count the days until it's their turn to go. If you have no idea where to start, connect with Kaleidoscope Adventures at mykatrip.com.
I didn't enjoy teaching male students as much. Kind of like what you said, I couldn't, manage the hormones and the issues that they're going through. Even being a male myself was thinking, I was just like, I can't really relate to the guys. I don't know. It's very interesting, but I felt like I maybe got just a little bit better at the beginning of year three, and I started to uh, I started to really reflect on like which classroom procedures were working and how much like planning of procedures I need to be focusing on procedures more than content, especially in the beginning, because kids thrive in structure and they really crave that, predictability and that you're going to
Hmm.
have a safe environment, not necessarily just welcoming safe wise, but I know like kids are like, I know what to expect each time.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It takes time for the teacher to get good at that structure, because if the teacher's not good at the structure, the kids won't be either, and we are the ones that have to guide them through that structure. Oh, I want to float another perspective by you, and then I want to get into your list of specific things that you want to be better at. So I recently got an email. I'm not going to say the person's name because I was not given explicit permission to do so, but he's another youngish, mid 20s, later 20s music educator who's recently left the classroom. Now, this person I have personally seen teach and seen his program, a very gifted young teacher, but also made a decision to leave the classroom, citing some of the same things that you just did. This was a listener to the show who wrote in an email, offered some really interesting insights to me to think about and to chew on related to this topic, which was just kind of a neat coincidence that it just happened to happen around the same time that I had scheduled with you, because it really got me thinking about this teachers leaving the classroom problem, because it is a national problem. It's a generational problem, and that education is really struggling, I think, to figure out what to do about, and as a profession. And one of the insights that this person wrote in, and I want to see if this rings true also with you at all. This choir teacher is also married to a math teacher. And they've had a lot of conversations in their house as a family about how math teachers, I don't think, feel this way in the same way that we do. In the sense that we feel as choir teachers, we've been raised to like have this expectation that when we walk into our classroom, all the kids' eyes will light up with passion for music. And if we are not creating like these passionate little musicians who love choir as much as we did, then we are failing them, and that we are not doing a good job. But then the math teacher knows walking in that every kid hates their class and is only there because they have to be. So the math teacher doesn't grow up with that mythology around being a math, like they don't have that expectation on themselves. They think things like, if I can get two or three kids excited about this math project, I'm winning, because I know that math kids come into a math class usually with parents who told them, oh, math was my least favorite subject, but you got to take it and got to work hard. It's not very exciting, not very fun, but you got to do it. And they kids come in with that attitude. And so the teacher walks in without that expectation of all these shining eyes, like the episode I did recently where kids have to have these shining eyes all the time. Now, it is possible to inspire large room groups full of kids, but I would say that is an advanced teaching thing. It takes time, and so I wonder if you need to inspire or feel that pressure to be a certain type of choir teacher that you had pictured yourself being was part of this.
Absolutely. Yes, especially my very first year. I had tried, so hard to make every single student that I taught really enjoy choir. And I think it's because we feel that way is because we like, or I should say most of us that are music educators they had this deep emotional response to how much they enjoyed choir, and they want
Yep.
every child to feel that way as well, like as excited as we were. And yeah, I think we should strive to, have like really engaging rehearsals and a really, positive classroom environment. But yeah, I've noticed that too, especially with other with teachers who aren't music educators. There's one teacher that I'm friends with. She's a science teacher, and I like she loves science, but she knows that not every student is going to be excited. And I feel like us as music educators, we tend to kind of, fall on our own swords, so to speak. If we have kids that, don't like choir, it just kind of feels like a personal attack. That like, how could you not like this? Like, I love it. How could you how could you not like it?
Right. And the personal attack thing is I think dead on,
Yeah.
because we do take it very personally. And that is something I've struggled with my whole career too. And I'm not saying that I've even gotten over it completely, but I've just, it's a skill. Compartmentalizing certain things like this are a skill, and you get better at it over time. The more students you teach, the more you start to see it as like, well, I'm going to win over, so to speak, I'm going to win over for the art form a certain percentage of them. And I think one of the ways that I've solved this in my head to where I'm at a more of a kind of emotionally healthy place with it is that I think of it as like, well, let me put it this way. I think sometimes choir teachers also really don't like to see what we do, music teachers in general, that we don't like to think of what we do as just one of the many subjects taught in a school. We have this mythology around how it's like the best one, the most important one, and it's crucial, and all kids should do it, and all of these things. And I agree, like, I think music's incredible, but that requires a healthy balance with the reality that many kids who take music classes are signing up for the music class just to give it a shot. They're there for the same reasons that they would sign up for club volleyball or some other thing, especially their parents. Like they're putting them in the music lesson or signing them up for the choir class, not because they're hoping to have some emotionally mountaintop experience. They're just trying one of the subjects that the school offers. And we just happen to be one of the teachers that teach one of the subjects that schools offer. Kids and parents don't have that expectation. They believe that they're being allowed to try out programs to see if they like them. And then they run into the emotionally needy choir teacher who pressures them into loving it, which is really not a good way to get kids to love it. Thoughts?
Yeah, and to kind of go off of that, I think also we tend to feel that way because most often music is an elective. At least in in Wisconsin, it's required to take a music class when you're in sixth grade, and then afterwards it becomes an elective. So I think earlier
Yeah, that's how
on.
it is for us.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Mhm. Yep.
But yeah, we it's an elective, so we think like they're electing to take this, so they should already, really like it or or must really want to be there.
Right. When in reality, some of them do, but some of them are just trying it. You elect to go to a movie too. It doesn't mean you're going to like the movie. And I think that is the realization that a lot of choir teachers get later in their career once they realize that you're not going to win them all. You're not going to win them all, and that has to start to be kind of okay. Okay, Mitch, let's get into this list that you wrote because this is a really good one. So one of the things you wanted to know more about is how to structure a rehearsal with an end goal in mind besides just running through pieces. This is a great one because I see lots of young teachers struggle with this. Just kind of the decision paralysis of what are we going to do next? Describe that problem for you and how you see it manifesting either in the classroom or with your adult group.
Yeah. So, thinking about when I was teaching, I always enjoyed class more when we had music to rehearse. And in the earlier days of the school year, I didn't like it as much because we weren't rehearsing music. I felt like we weren't really like working towards anything, which sounds silly because the procedures and the routines help you get to that point where you can have really great rehearsals and really engaging rehearsals. But I felt like once we got to that stage that we were just rehearsing music for the concert. Like we have a concert coming up, so we're just rehearsing music. And I was really concerned with just how accurate are the pitches, how accurate are the rhythms. Dynamics, are great, but I was really focused on how well can we learn the music. And I that was really like my only sort of fix that was really my only like fixation was just rehearsing the music and just this pitch needs to be the right one, this rhythm needs to be the right one. And I just really I had difficulty, kind of thinking beyond that, and I still do, especially with my community choir, because I had been in choirs where that's kind of all we did, was just really rehearse and drill pitches and rhythms. And I don't really remember all of the other spots in between, like those really musical moments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting point. So, how many, just out of curiosity, when you were teaching, how many minutes a day did you see kids?
Um, so we were on a at the school I was at. We were on a rotation. So I would have, let's see, I would have some days three choirs I would see, and then other days one choir that I would see every other day. And I saw them for 40 minutes at a time.
Okay, so and this is middle school level, and
Yes.
so and they're every other day for about 40. That's the middle school actually, and where I teach are the kids that come to me in ninth grade. That's about what they get to every other day for 45 minutes or so. And it is a challenge. So that structure, I will tell you, that structure is not the case everywhere. There are middle school choir programs in other districts near us where those kids are in choir every day. And it is amazing what can be accomplished when they're in choir every day. That being said, if where you're stuck as a rehearsal planner is that you're struggling to figure out what more should be getting done, well then that's a different question. So, because I would say the way my brain works when I'm getting ready for a rehearsal at school, we have 44 minutes every day. And I feel like it's not even close to enough time. Like there are so many things that I want to teach, but we don't have time. And so I'm thinking about like, what do I want to sacrifice? Like, what am I going to have to get rid of in this lesson plan so that we can get good at the things that we are trying to do? And so for me, that list is like, obviously literacy. I preach that a lot. I want the kids in my program, the goal is independent musicians, that they can be handed the music and just go off and figure it out. So I'm trying to get to build skills so that they can learn songs. So one of the things that I try to do is set up my classroom so that I'm not teaching them notes and rhythms. I am teaching them how to figure out what notes and rhythms sound like. And so that does occupy a good amount of the rehearsal time. And that takes care of a lot of the lesson planning as it is. And so this, I think in some ways for adult groups too, can be built into the culture. And I'm curious now, so with your adult group, how often do you see them?
I see them once a week for 2 hours.
Okay. Is there any expectation in the culture of that group that people are coming prepared to the group, or is it the expectation that we are going to show up, think about this choir for 2 hours, and then leave and not think about it again until we come back?
I really try to preach because since we're non-auditioned, I would say a sizable amount can't read music, but they can hear they have good ears for the most part. So we do have practice tracks
I was gonna ask
to
about that.
rehearse
Yeah.
with or to
Hmm.
listen to and sing along with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever, since the question on your list there was about structuring these rehearsals in terms of time, do you ever let them go off and work on their own as groups, like as sections? Do you have sectionals during that time at all?
Yes, I have. I have in the past before. This semester, I haven't been able to,
Hmm.
just with the amount of time that we've had together.
Right. Yeah, so I then that would be one of my recommendations is to get back to that because it does a lot for not only your sanity during the rehearsal to be able to just get work going without you having to be the wand waver for every little thing. So you will find your rehearsals becoming less stressful. But also, I think sectionals and having the singers lead themselves in a sectional is a great way to get buy-in, like on the final product. Like this is our final product. This is not Mitch's magic wand waving product. This is like a thing we did. And so that's a really good one. And now in my classroom, I'm an anti practice tracks person because I'm trying to teach those building blocks for the kids. And we need all the time we can get to do that. It takes a long time. But in a community group like yours, I would 100% use tracks. And I would even think about maybe bringing to rehearsal for like stereo boombox type things. I'm assuming it's a 4-part choir or 3 parts or whatever, and maybe employing that during the sectional. Like you guys go off and work with your practice track, even getting some kind of corporate sense of like the tenors. We feel like we're all doing this the same way, and come back, and then all the altos now feel like they're doing this the same way. And then each night's rehearsal could be structured in a way where the group has because I do a 2-hour rehearsal with my advanced choir kids at school too. So I have a 2-hour Monday. So I've got some experience with this. So when I come in or when the kids come into that 2-hour rehearsal on the board in the front of the room, I've written out every minute of that rehearsal. At 6 o'clock, we are going to start in sectionals on this piece from this measure to this measure, and you're going to have 12 minutes. And when you get back from the 12 minutes, we're going to hear everybody together. And if there were still problems, then there's going to be a sectional period number 2. We're going to go back out and try to fix those problems. And then maybe at 7 o'clock, we're moving to this piece and we're going to have sectionals in this many locations. And that way I can divide the rehearsal up also for the variety of the singers so that they're not always feeling like they're standing in one place, just doing the same thing over and over. So they're always walking around, moving to different places. Thoughts about that? And could you picture that working in your environment?
Yeah, I can definitely picture that working in my choir. Recently, I we have a lot of music educators in our choir,
Mm-hmm.
some of
Mm-hmm.
which work in the school district that the choir kind of founded in. Others have had like years and years of experience, and I have relied upon them to rehearse with the choir and to get unique perspectives as well. And I feel like it also creates a lot of buy-in for our singers also, and it. I think that has been like a really rewarding experience. I think our singers have really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed watching them as well. It's given me a lot of things. And then I've also recorded myself with kind of having that in mind.
Right. Yeah, that's great. That sounds like a unique environment. That I'm glad you get a chance to do that. Okay, the next one on your list is how to give short and concise directions. Talk to us about why you feel like you suck at that,
I feel
or
like
in
I
what way
tend
do you?
to, yeah, I feel like I tend to ramble on. Like I feel like the directions I've given haven't been clear enough, like in my own mind. So I feel like I need to keep talking about them when probably in
Mm,
reality, I've said what I needed to say. But
hmm.
in my mind, I feel like I haven't said it. Like I haven't gotten the point across. So I need to keep talking about it. And I can feel
Right.
myself doing that often.
Yeah, and you're in. See, that's the thing. This is where I say I hope someday you get back in the classroom because your instincts of what questions you should be asking are dead on, because these are like core educator and rehearsal plan. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be school. It's just like leading an ensemble rehearsal. These are like the core things, and it's okay to suck at them, Mitch. It's okay, but you're doing exactly the right thing, which is trying to figure out ways to get better at it. So I've got a couple tips here for the short and concise directions thing, and this is something I've done PDs on, and I've worked with a lot of student teachers on this and over the years, and so this is one of those core principles that I teach, which is that the cycles of learning are very important, how they're structured. So is the instruction of what the group is about to do, does it come with really basically some key points and then you just stop talking? It's where are we? What measure? So what measure are we starting on? What beat are we starting on? However, your group is used to establishing what the key sounds like at that time, the starting pitch, whatever it is, all that information is given. And then most importantly, I think also speaks to your first question about like just not running through to learn notes. I always teach people to make sure that that first instruction, the initial instruction, includes a goal. And for early in the rehearsal process, those goals are usually very short and very simple. So for me, let's say I'm working with a ninth grade girls group or something. That could look like we're doing something simple, 2-part, 3-part, whatever it is. And I say, okay, we're at measure 22. We're in the key of F. Here's what F sounds like. Everybody sing your starting note. And we're going to go from measure 1 to measure 22. And the goal is to get half the notes right. 2, ready, and go. And they just go. And then we make an attempt. And then here's the key. It's the cycles. Is before they are done with that first attempt, I need to have 2 or 3 or so possible next instructions ready before they finish the 22 measures. And the 2 or 3 possible things are, what happens if they nail it and exceed expectations? What am I going to say? What will my next goal for them be based on the fact that the goal was only 50%, but they got like 90% of that right. So how am I going to praise them? And what is my next goal going to be because they're already there? So that's like the best case scenario, right? And then another goal is, or another possible response, and I practice this ahead of time, is one of my possible second responses is, what if they just, they get to about 50%? What is then the next goal? And the next goal would probably be, okay, now we're going to try to get to 75% correct, but now we're also going to add in dynamics and the expressive markings that are in the music. And I want them to do that right away. And so we're going to add something each time. And then, of course, you have to have something ready in your pocket for if it just crashes and burns. Like this was not even close. We have to start again. We're just going to try goal 1 again, everybody. We're just going to take a second attempt and let's go. And when you get to that point where it's rehearse feedback based on what just happened, which is also on your list too, I think, of just like making sure that you're giving feedback rather than in your own head about what the music is. And part of that is the practice of having 3 things ready, because that gives you some kind of a way to avoid that pause that you just described, or that rambling you just described, of kind of trying to talk yourself into what the next goal is. Is you have those ready ahead of time. Thoughts about that, and what does that make you? I can see your wheels are spinning over there. So narrate.
Yeah. See, I'm doing it already.
So you're allowed to do that here because this is a podcast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like having those three things, just ready to go in your back pocket would take a considerable amount of time because let's say if it's a measure that, well, thinking about it now, let's say if it's a measure where we're just having a really difficult time with the rhythm, maybe half of the group is getting the rhythm correct, the other half is performing it incorrectly. Knowing how to break that measure down and how to, build up that trouble spot would take some time to figure out like how to sequence it step by step. So I could definitely see myself doing that. It's just kind of that unknown factor of like, okay, kind of like what you had said earlier, like what am I going to have ready to go if they nail it? What am I going to have ready to go if only about 75% get it right? And what am I going to have ready to go if it just completely flops?
Yeah. No, that's true. And I will say it's a lot harder work when you're younger and newer because the reason I teach that three-point system to young teachers is because that's a good place to start. It's a manageable good place to start for a young teacher to just have this habit of having like one thing for if it's awesome, one thing for if it's kind of okay, and one thing if it's a train wreck. Because in reality, in my head now, doing it, I've done thousands of these cycles now. And so by year 23, I'm thinking about way more than three possible things. I've got 100 possible things I could say after they stop singing because I've encountered all these issues before. And so the example you pointed out of like what if there's a like one particular tricky rhythm that maybe like measure that has a bunch of tricky rhythms, I would say then to you that in your score preparation for getting ready to rehearse that you would go through the music looking for those places where that might happen and preload that problem ahead of time. So I don't know if you're a Takadimi person. I've recently become a Takadimi person. Very, very helpful even because it can be taught in 20 minutes what most of the Takadimi syllables sound like, and adults can use them and all that kind of stuff too. And so that can still fit into that model that I just described. So let's say you go through that portion, everything's okay except for that one measure that just kind of falls apart. Well, then that becomes your next instruction. Hey, everybody, did you notice that we didn't all agree on what was going on in measure 22? We better go back to measure 22 and let's just make the next goal is just figuring out that. What are some of the tools we can use? So if it's a classroom, they're going to say things to me like, well, we could use our Takadimi. We could do count singing here. We could clap the rhythm, whatever it is. And like, okay, well, let's try that. And then that becomes the next goal. And then that leads you. It's almost like, I don't know, in your generation, did you guys have the choose your own adventure books?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, this is why I can't actually plan a rehearsal. I plan like what we're going to work on in a big picture meta sense, but in terms of what measures actually get rehearsed, what number of times, I don't plan that ahead of time because I figure that out based on how they respond to that first goal of the rehearsal. And then from there, that gives me my next goal. And then from how they do to that one, well, that now leads us to another thing that we could do, almost like a choose your own adventure. And so who knows where the rehearsal is going to end up. But that's where the score prep part is so important for the young conductor to know intimately where all the little traps and pitfalls might be. And I will say too, for you, Mitch, if that all feels like it's overwhelming and like it's a lot, it is at first, and then you get really good at it.
I could see that looking in my group as form of a form of a question. I kind of did this a
Mm-hmm.
little bit when I was teaching. I would ask them more questions uh, rather than give them like direct feedback, and I feel like that created a lot of ownership
Yes.
in that rehearsal process. For example, if we were talking about a dynamic, it's like, did you like think about the dynamic that you started on measure 5? Did you grow into that dynamic? Like, did you truly start at that dynamic, or do you think it was something different? And, give people the chance to share. Or you started at this dynamic. Do you think we got to X dynamic at measure Z, so to speak? I
Right.
could see it
Yeah. No,
in
that's
the
a
form of a
very
lot of
good strategy.
questions.
Yeah, that's a very good strategy. And you're right, it does lead to more buy-in from the singers. One of the phrases I like to use in that scenario is are you guys happy with the crescendo that you just did at measure 25? Because if I'm not happy with it, they probably weren't either, and it gives them a chance to like say it. And then also it makes it so that I'm not the only one saying everything that's bad, and it gives them a chance to say, hey, we didn't really do that crescendo, did we? No, you didn't. So let's try it again, and that becomes the next goal. So yeah, that's it. Can those things, the question responding with questions is very, very helpful. thing. Okay, let's do one more, and then we're just going to talk about some resources that people and yourself can go to in the future for some of the other ones. So let's talk about why you feel like your warm-ups are not effective. And I'm assuming you feel like they're not effective, or else you wouldn't have put them on the what you suck at list.
Yeah, so the reason why I feel like my warm-ups aren't effective, and it kind of goes back to the first one, is we're just warm-ups as, it's just more of a procedural thing. And I have a difficulty building warm-ups that don't seem repetitive or that aren't very repetitive. I really want to focus more on skill building warm-ups. I just don't know, or I have difficulty seeing what that would look like so that they don't become monotonous and less of a routine and just more of an opportunity to build skills.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did you happen to catch my warm-ups episode?
I don't think so. No.
Go back and check that out. That would be a good place to go. But I'll do a short summary here, just of something you might think about, because again, everything on your list, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to you originally, Mitch. Everything on your list are things that I struggled with as a young teacher and had to figure out. And so that you're like nothing, and that's the one bit of feedback I wanted you to get. And I think it's better if you hear me say it like directly to you. Your list is not weird. Your list is the thing that most young conductors are not very good at first. And they are kind of, like I said before, the core skills that we have to build, and building skills takes time. And so the one about feeling like your warm-ups are just kind of mindless repetition is a very common frustration for choir teachers. It happens a lot, and choir directors. And so one of the ways I like to think of it, and again, this is hard for me to tell like people what to do here, because everybody's rehearsals are structured so differently, and the goals of everybody's rehearsals are different. And so I mentioned my 44-minute class periods, which I feel are like stupid short. And so I've had to shorten my vocal warm-up time in my class, because when earlier in my career, I got used to 54 minutes, and then our school shortened classes to 44 minutes. And I suddenly had to like figure out what 10 minutes of stuff is no longer important. And so it did result in me shortening the vocal warm-up time, and then embedding some of those vocal concepts in other parts of the class. And so what I think about for warm-ups is, one, there's got to be some goal for everything. So if I'm going to have them even sing a scale, I'm going to ask them things like what they should be feeling for, what they should be listening for. So, for example, a 5-note descending scale, almost always the kids sing the third scale degree, and the adults flat. That third degree goes flat, and so I ask them to make certain adjustments there, etc. I'm always asking them to feel for something and telling them what the goal is for each particular exercise, and that helps take care of the mindlessness problem. Because even if it is the simplest warm up in the whole world, or just 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, or whatever, there can still be a goal, and that the singers are being asked to work towards. And then I also try to include in every warm up time some warm up that I have just made up on the spot. And it could just be a different combination of pitches and rhythms. Maybe I've been doing too much in like a duple meter for their warm ups, like a dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da, some kind of a structure like that. Hey, I haven't done any 6/8 warm ups in a while. Bottom bum beatum bum bottom bum beatum bum bot, and just creating some like note and rhythm pattern, because then they're developing their vocal technique through that, but they're also learning to audiate new patterns. And you can attach some of the literacy concepts during your warm-ups in that way too. So like if I do a 6/8, and I would then not tell them it's in 6/8, but I would say, what is that? What are you hearing there? What kind of warm-up is this? What meter would this be in if we did this? And that sounds like 6/8. Oh, okay. So there's ways that you can embed all kinds of thinking games into your warm-ups. And then at school, I always try to embed into the warm-up some kind of solfege, music literacy, fluency part too. And I can usually get all that done in about 5 minutes. There's some element of all those things in there. And then I also give myself the gift of not overthinking whether or not I just did a great job for those 5 minutes. Because if I didn't do very well today, I'll do better tomorrow and move on. Thoughts?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening in my rehearsal space. And that would take a lot of the, like what you said, like how did I do in that 5 minutes? It would take a lot of the pressure off. How can we make this simple warm up sound like spot on? One of the big things that we're working on with my choir is vowels. I feel like our group has really good ears, and we don't have any issues with people or singers singing the wrong notes per se. It just sounds really off because the vowels just aren't there. Everybody's all over the place. So one of the things that I could really see is, working on the really like simple warm-ups, but just having a lot of work on vowels.
Yes, absolutely. How do you teach vowels was on your list too. How do you currently teach vowels? What is your go-to instructional method for getting them to understand how to do a vowel correctly?
Yeah, so vowels, I like to demonstrate the vowels, and I have them repeat it back, like say and then just and then do it in an incorrect way, say and then they do it and then they do it back. And I'll usually give them like a phrase to say, like I sigh to sing. I have them say it back, and then
Uh-huh.
a gross way, I sigh to sing. Very widespread. I have them sing it. I sigh to sing. And they sing it back, and then they sing it in a gross way. And I'll usually ask them, like, what did you notice about the two different ways that you said or sang that exercise? And then they'll usually say one sounds very tall or it sounds very deep. The other one, it sounds very like, widespread, spread with your mouth. And
Yeah.
I will usually say that how we sing as a choir is going to be different than how we talk. So the reason why we spend so much time modifying these, sorry about bumping the mic, how we modify these vowels is that we all say words and sing words differently. So we all need to be on the same page. Now, usually my pitfall is that I say all that and I do all of that, and then there's very like little reinforcing. Like, we've done it before, why aren't you doing it? sort of thing. And
Right.
I fail
That's
to,
interesting. Okay,
yeah,
that was gonna be my next question is how do you feel like that's going for you, taking that approach? And so if it's okay, am I allowed to tell you why it's not working?
go for it.
Okay. So I would say I say all those things too. Like, for the most part, I say all those things to my groups. But the one thing you're missing is teaching them the anatomy of the vowel in such a way that they can fix it on their own later. That's number one. And then also the biggest issue with the kind of modeling the vowel and having them model it back to you kind of thing is that they can hear you very, very differently than they hear themselves. So it can lead to a false sense of them getting it. So, for example, if you say sigh, I sigh, they hear a very different version of your sound than you do. And then when they do it back to you, vice versa occurs. And so it's almost like two different people speaking two different languages back and forth at each other. The problem is no one knows that their language is not shared. And so it leads to a bunch of false senses of security. So one of the things that's really important, and I bet you could revolutionize, and if you're not already kind of used to doing it, is having recording and quick playback devices in your rehearsal spaces at all times. Is if there is a problematic vowel, we're going to sing that part. We're going to play it. We're going to listen back, and we're going to play it back right away in real time. Because then they need to hear it the way, not through their own ears. They need to hear it from an external source of what they really sound like versus what they think they sound like. And at first, they're going to be very sensitive to that. They will cringe. They will not feel good about things at first, but then they actually do get desensitized to that, and they kind of learn to crave that feedback of like, okay, what does it really sound like, so that we can make adjustments. So that's number one. Number two would be the anatomy of the vowel thing is missing. Is rather than simply demonstrating an ah vowel, teach them what they can check for themselves in terms of their own anatomy that will verify that it is an ah. And this is where choir teachers can go to linguistics a little bit more sometimes, and the IPA chart and all of that, and the IPA symbols refer to certain body positions. They don't. So, for example, one of my pet peeves is in choir world, we put up these IPA charts in our rehearsal spaces that say things like, well, the letter A symbol in IPA, it's ah for father. Okay, but but if you live in Boston, father's pronounced father. So which vowel is it? That's a horrible way to teach a vowel because it's not culturally competent for everybody, number one. And number two, it's not anatomically relevant either. So what I teach kids is that, so first of all, to have good singing vowels in general, resonant space for our singing vowels, we need to have enough space in the mouth or else none of the vowels work. So how do I know I have enough space? You can't just show them your mouth and make them do what you do because your body's shaped differently than theirs. And so we teach them to find the hole that opens up between the jaw and the top of the head. So when I release my jaw and where my earlobe skin touches my jaw skin, if I release my jaw, a little hole appears and my finger will fit inside of it. So now I know I have enough space there. And then I also teach them that you can also check to see if you've opened too far, because a lot of really overachiever choir singers will overfunction and try to open too far. And so I teach them to take their two thumbs up underneath their chin and feel for the squishy space behind the bone And then as they open their mouth, once they've gone too far, they will feel that muscle flex and it'll get hard. And once that is flexed, you've gone too far. So my kids, even in ninth grade, they learn like, okay, so how do you know you have enough space but not too much in your mouth? And so we say, well, they'll all point right here. So we check here to see if we have enough. And we check here to see if we have gone too far. And then we know that if from there, all the other vowels that we're trying to do will work. Because if I go to that position and my lips are relaxed and my tongue is down at the front of my teeth at the bottom, the noise that will come out is there are no other noises that could come out in that scenario. And so then it becomes an objective thing. It's objectively verifiable rather than, do you feel like we're singing off? Which is very, very common in choir rehearsals. It becomes this esoteric thing. And then we can talk about the tongue position for E within that space and the tongue position for E where it flattens down at the bottom. All those types of things are very important that singers understand what to feel for because we recognize that they cannot hear themselves. Thoughts?
I think that is a spectacular way to teach vowels, and I had no clue. Like I had no clue about that. Like as you were explaining it, my eyes were just glued. I was like, yes, I'm very locked in because it's
Okay,
something that
good.
I
Good. I'm
struggle
glad I
with.
could give you one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
just
there are some
yeah.
resources that I would recommend too. I've done lots of podcasts on those things in the Vocal Ped series, but some of the teaching tools that I recommend, there's one called Pink Trombone, and it's just a little free web widget. It's like an internet widget. If you have a way to put a computer screen up in your rehearsal at all, is that it'll bring up the vocal tract, but it's like a movable cartoon version of the vocal tract, and you can take the mouse and you can drag the tongue around to different positions. You can drag the lips open and closed. You can basically manipulate the parts of the vocal tract that a singer would need to learn how to manipulate. And pink, of course, for flesh, and trombone for wind instrument. And just showing how if you move your tongue to this position, this vowel happens. But it's important to explain to them the anatomy part first. So where like none of this works if your mouth isn't open the right amount, because then there's not enough room for your tongue to go into all these different positions. Because we tend to speak with our mouth closed, and if we don't get into singing position, then none of the tongue positions will work. So I teach it very much. I guess you would say I teach it like an instrumental teacher would, which is like we've got to shape the instrument correctly and put the right parts in the right places at the right time. And they have to be taught what those parts are. So I would recommend using Pink Trombone and all of that. In fact, vocal pedagogy resources that I would recommend would be things like Solutions for Singers is the name of the book, Diagnosis of Vocal Faults. I think it's episode 140. My wife Beth and I did a presentation at a convention that was like a vocal ped presentation. And in that episode, we list a bunch of books to go find that are very, very helpful, and not like reading graduate school level books either. Like they're simple books to read. Diagnosis of Vocal Faults is a great little have on your desk flip book reader to go like, I'm hearing nasality. What do I do? That kind of stuff. So those resources are definitely out there, and I would encourage everybody to kind of check those out. But Mitch, how are we doing so far? Let's wrap this up by you giving me a chance to kind of process where your brain is at. I hope this hour has been helpful and that you've got a chance to kind of think about some stuff and get some perspective.
Yes, I feel like this has been a really productive conversation, and it's helped me shed some light on a lot of the issues that I've been having or that I've had in the past. And it just makes me feel very excited to just try these out and um, definitely think about, like moving forward in my choral conducting career, whether it's, still with, our community choir, advancing in that or going back. So it's given me a lot to think about, and it's made me feel very excited and just very hopeful, and also like reassured that I know that there are other people that are struggling with these things and that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
alone in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I was hoping to accomplish by talking to you. I mean, just for transparency, yes, I was feeling like I wanted to talk to you about it because you had posted that, but I also wanted to do this episode for the other teachers that are feeling this way. Not and you seemed open by putting that post out to being scrutinized in that way, which I thought could be very, very helpful for others that don't feel like they could admit out loud in public that they're not feeling like they're good at their job. Because I think that's a lot of the issue that is going around, is that people, there's an imposter syndrome that they want to constantly put out this air of competence. And so I think you're doing, not all heroes wear capes, Mitch, but what you have done today is heroic. and I appreciate you spending this time with me and talking through things. And I hope you will maybe not be as hard on yourself going forward.
Yes. Easier said than done, but
I know.
baby
I know.
steps at a time.
I know. Well, thank you so much, Mitch, for hanging out with me.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of a conversation. If you are still hearing my voice, that means you're one of the MVPs, one of the diehards, one of the real ones, as the kids say. So if you are willing on the way out to check out a few different ways that you can help me continue to make this show high quality. One, use the promo code. That's the biggest one. At Sight Reading Factory, at mymusicfolders.com, at mychoirropes.com, at graphitepublishing.com, and endeavormusicpublishing.com. All of those take the Choralosophy checkout code. And of course, now the newest one is 3-Minute Theory. You can get a 15% discount when you enter Choralosophy at checkout there. And of course, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a positive review is very helpful there, and sharing the episodes to your colleagues in real life and on social media. All of those things are incredibly helpful and allow me to continue to create this resource for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.